Welcome to Full Faith, Empty Arms, a podcast for those walking the difficult road of infertility, especially within the context of faith. I'm Shannon Adams, here with my dear friend Pam Dennison, and our hope is to create a place where honest conversations can happen, where hard things can be spoken out loud, and where no one has to feel quite so alone. If you pressed play today, we know it might have taken a little bit of courage. Infertility can be deeply personal, isolating, and painful, especially within the culture of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where family is such a central part of life and identity. The idea behind Full Faith, Empty Arms is that both can exist at the same time. It's possible to love God, to have meaningful faith and hope, and still struggle, grieve, and have very real pain. There are many forms of infertility, and while this may not have been a path you chose, we're really glad you found us. We hope these conversations feel a little bit like sitting down with friends who understand. Today's conversation touches on childhood abuse, trauma, infertility, and grief. Our guest shares her story with remarkable courage and hope, but we recognize that these topics may be difficult for some listeners. We encourage you to listen in whatever way feels healthiest for you. And please see the resources in the show notes if you feel like you need some extra support. Welcome back to the podcast. I am very excited to have Niki White with us today. Niki is a friend in my ward who I've come to really admire and respect, and I am very appreciative that she is willing to come on today and share her story a little bit. A couple of weeks ago, I had reached out to Niki about the possibility of doing this, and she wanted to maybe get together and talk in person first about it before deciding if it was something that should be shared on the podcast. And I can honestly say that being in her living room that afternoon, it's weird to say, but it was an extremely uplifting experience for me to suddenly feel this deep connection to Niki after hearing some of her story and struggle, and also the healing process and the faith that has carried her through and gotten her to this point. And I just remember leaving your house, Niki, I just felt so lifted in a weird way. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of weird to say because it was a heavy thing. It is a heavy thing, but it also was just strengthening to feel like, yeah, we can come together as we step forward in this common struggle. So I'm just really excited to have her here today. She has a big story. And so I just hope that as you're listening, you stick with us, stick to the end. There might be things that may be harder to hear, but I do think it's important for us to have opportunities to come together and share our stories like this. And I know there's going to be people out there that will benefit from hearing Niki's story and seeing her faith and her journey and where she has come to. Niki, we're just going to kind of go through these questions and let you take us wherever you want, share as much detail as you want, keep things as vague and general as you want, whatever you are comfortable with. This is your story. So if you could start out by sharing a little bit about yourself and your hopes for marriage and motherhood before your infertility journey began.
Well, first of all, I love what you guys are doing. This is groundbreaking. I think this is amazing. I feel like I know both of you personally now, like we're all sitting around on a couch just sharing a story. So I want to thank you very much. And thank you for that intro. I think that was more than I deserved. But thank you very much for building me up and building my confidence. So my story is unique because it isn't just about infertility. And it isn't just about trauma. It's about where trauma and infertility, faith, grief, and healing, they all kind of intersect on my journey. So, so many little girls, I think we all kind of dream about getting married and becoming a mom. But because of the home that I grew up in, and I don't even know if I should call it a home, it was a temporary place of residence where I actually had a bed and a roof over my head. That dream really wasn't about a wedding. I think it was more about finally feeling safe. I grew up surrounded by abuse, And when I say abuse, it was without getting into detail, if you name it, and it was present. I was surrounded by neglect, addiction, poverty, instability. It was just not a good place for a child to be. My younger brother and I learned how to survive long before we ever got to experience what childhood should have looked like. And looking back, I'm reminded of an episode, one of the episodes here in the podcast. Looking back, we lived in what Dr. Amanda Colby described on one of the previous episodes as a constant fight or flight response. When I heard her explain that, I remember thinking that was our childhood. And by God's grace, we survived. And survival will probably be a theme that I'll carry through the rest of my story. So, anyway, so my dream was to build something different. I wanted a home where children felt safe, they felt protected, they felt deeply loved, and they never had to wonder where their basic needs would be met. I wanted to become the kind of parent that I needed as a little girl. Um, and then just before I met my husband, everything changed. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and suddenly the dream of motherhood kind of became a gray area. It was uncertain. For years, I thought my story was simply about infertility, but healing has helped me realize it began so much earlier than that. Infertility wasn't the beginning of my story, it was another chapter in a story that started with childhood trauma. Today, I don't see my story as being about everything that was taken from me. I see it as a story of how God has continued writing my life through the trauma. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer when I was 18, and that was as a result of HPV that had
Mhm.
gone untreated after years of childhood sexual abuse and neglect. It was a really long, hard process getting the biopsies, which, if anybody knows, they don't give you anything afterwards to comfort you. I passed out. They didn't get it the first time, so they had to go
No.
back and do it again, and I passed out. I was in so much pain. And I'm not to sound like a wimp, but
No, they tell you it's gonna be like a really bad cramp. That's all they tell you.
they lie. It's not. But anyway, so after the biopsy, they found the precancerous cells, and so when I went in to do the biopsy, he says, "While I'm in there, well, I'm under the hood, I guess I'll go ahead and I'll remove anything that needs to be or whatever." Just to note, I didn't have a hysterectomy or anything. But after the surgery, my doctor did tell me that I might not be able to carry children after that. And even if I did become pregnant, it would be considered high risk. Um, and I look back at that at 18, I didn't think I fully understood what that meant. I was focusing on surviving. Here we go again. Surviving on what just happened to me. Motherhood still felt so far away that I hadn't really processed what I had been told. And I I was an 18-year-old trying to be an adult, trying to make adult decisions for myself that could possibly set the course for the rest of my life.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Now that I'm looking back at it, again, the survival theme is probably going to carry through this. And it wasn't until years later, after I married the most amazing man. He's truly the love of my life. Those words came rushing back. And as we both began facing the possibility that biological children would not be a part of our story, I realized I wasn't just grieving infertility, it was grieving the way that childhood trauma had continued affecting my life long after the abuse ended. The abuse ended when I was a preteen, but the consequences didn't. And that I'm sorry, that realization, it changed everything. For years, I thought infertility was the hardest part of my story, but healing helped me see it was one more loss connected to something that I never chose. I'm sorry, ladies.
No, this
Ooh,
is a safe place where tears are definitely allowed.
okay. Honestly, I felt robbed. I felt and I think people who have been through this can understand this. I felt broken, like almost like a shattered porcelain doll. That's how I saw myself. I believed I was damaged goods. I remember thinking, who would want me? Who would want to marry someone who might never be able to have children? And the bad part is, I haven't shared my story with many relationships because of what I thought they would think of me. None of this was something that I chose. I was living with the consequences of choices made, and I'm sorry to sound mad about it, but I was living with the consequences of the choices that were made by adults who were supposed to protect me. And that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to accept and that I'm still working through today. Um, I carried an overwhelming amount of guilt. I I love my husband so much, and I felt that I let him down because I couldn't give him children. Even though I knew deep down it wasn't my fault, I still carried that weight. Um,
That's something that came up last week too, is how people don't realize how much we feel for our husbands, like how we feel like we've failed our husbands.
yeah,
And you have every right to feel angry about what happened to you.
thank you. You carry that with you even into adulthood. But that's just another layer of the grief though. And Pam, I'm kind of going to your story a little bit, but people would ask if we would consider fostering.
Mm.
And we truly did. We did start the process, but because of my own childhood trauma, I was one of those people who knew I couldn't put my effort and love and energy into a child, help them to heal, and then send them right back into an unsafe environment. I knew that my heart couldn't survive that. And it felt like another door quietly closed because of that realization. And I felt guilty about that too, because I was like, there's all these kids out there who need help, who I can 100% understand what they're going through and help them heal. I shouldn't have to close that door, but I have to think of my healing through this as well. And I don't want my healing to affect another child. Um, so when I heard your story, Pam, I felt that in my soul. It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, no, I feel guilty every day that I'm not still a foster parent. So I understand.
There's so much guilt that I think we feel so quickly, so
Mhm.
easily about so many facets of this whole journey
Yeah.
and circumstance. And Nikki, you talk about, the not being able to have kids being a result of the abuse. And I know that if those physical consequences had not been there, there's still the psychological aspect of
Yeah.
abuse that whoever goes through trauma is having to carry for however long that goes
Yeah.
for them. And so, but then to have the physical side of it, the very physical barrier be something that comes into the equation too, has just got to, I just can't imagine the twisting of the knife as far as the bitterness
Yeah.
of how hard that all was. So the fact that you can talk about it at all, I'm just super impressed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't just trying to heal and I wasn't just grieving about infertility. I was grieving years of losses that all traced back to the same place. And I think that's when I truly began to understand that trauma hadn't just affected my childhood, it had followed me into adulthood. And healing meant learning that those experiences could explain my pain without defining my worth. But I think that's where faith comes in. truly.
And that right there is something we could sit with. It's so easy for us to feel like our worth is less than for whatever reason,
Yes.
whether it's due to the actions of other people or through just not being able to have kids for other reasons or whatever it is that and so being able to explain our pain in a context that does not take away from our worth is a big step and not something that comes easily necessarily. That's huge right there. So thank you
Yeah.
for touching on that. Okay, how did your faith influence your journey through both the trauma and infertility?
So you're gonna have to forgive me, ladies, because here's where I'm gonna be totally human for a moment.
That's what we
This is
want.
where the imperfectness comes out. I struggled with God. I was angry. I asked why a loving father would allow so much to be taken from one child, because it goes beyond just the sexual abuse. There was a lot more to my story. These are highlights. These are not everyday survival. Nikki trying to get through her day. Where's her food going to come from? Where are we going to stay at tonight? Is dad going to hurt my mom? Is my mom going to be okay? Where's the food? We're going to be able to pay rent. So there were times I didn't feel loved at all. But over time, I realized that Heavenly Father wasn't asking me to pretend everything was okay. He was inviting me to keep walking with him, even when it wasn't okay. One of the truths that changed everything for me is realizing that Jesus Christ didn't just die for us. He willingly experienced every sorrow, every grief, every heartbreak. Because of that, he doesn't understand pain in relationship to theory, I guess, but he understands it personally. He can sit beside us with it and in it. Faith for me wasn't a cure. It didn't ease the trauma. It didn't erase the infertility, and it doesn't suddenly make everything make sense because there are people who live every day with HPV who get it and it comes and goes. A lot of times it doesn't cause infertility. I'm just the special statistic, I guess, that it did affect because it had gone untreated for so long at such a young age. But what faith gave me was the strength to take the next step. And sometimes it's just taking one step and then the next one and eventually another one after that. When I look back now, I can see that faith and healing were never separate journeys. I thought that they were, but they weren't. They were woven together. They were the same path. Healing didn't happen because my faith was perfect. And I'm not perfect in any way. It happened because even with my questions, even with my anger, even with my doubts, I kept choosing to take one more step with Christ.
That is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so easy for us to kind of silo faith if a life of faith looks like this, but
Yeah.
it doesn't look like anything except Jesus is with you in it, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
And my healing journey is not going to be the same as your healing journey. And my faith is not going to fit in the same way. It's not this laid out puzzle piece where we all have the same layout and we all
Right.
have the same puzzle pieces missing. Um, our walk of faith and healing looks differently from everybody, and that's okay. But it's good to have a place where we can come and help understand each other and be a part of each other's journey to help with the healing.
So you said your childhood was full of abuse. When did you learn about faith in Christ and all of that?
So I was not raised in the church. My parents are not members. My paternal grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather of my father, are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so um, some reprieve that I did get was getting to be with them once, twice a month on weekends and get to go to church with them. And that's where I learned where peace was, where safety was. My Nana specifically was my safety. And often as I'm going through EMDR therapy and things like that, she is often my anchor. Besides my husband, of course, but that's where I think that's where the seed was planted. And then I probably didn't truly become a member of the church. And my conversion story was probably, unfortunately, whenever I found out I had cancer. Sometimes trauma and sometimes life changing events can make us think about our mortality and where we stand in life. And I always went back to going to church with my grandparents and feeling my grandmother's love. And I think that's when I was 100% fully converted to Christ and walking with Him.
So I serve in primary right now, and every now and then we have kids visiting that we know nothing about where they're coming from. And you just sharing that and the impact that going to church with your Nana had on you just makes me want to provide that safety for anyone and everyone that's showing up in primary every Sunday. And so I think that's just a good reminder of the opportunity that we may have in our callings, or even just as someone who is attending church, that we can help provide a good experience and a safe place and an anchor
Yes.
that will be there for someone as they go through really hard things that no one else has any idea are going on. But that church exposure can really have a profound effects and how they end up dealing with it.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the song, There's Peace in Christ. No truer words have been spoken. And I always remembered the children's song, I am a child of God. Lead me, guide me, walk beside me. I always remembered that. And at any time that my parents were fighting behind closed doors, not knowing what's going on, not knowing if we'd have to get up in a hurry and leave, or not knowing where we're going to stay, or all the different traumas, that I always would think of that song in my head and it would always ground me. And I learned it in primary.
It's a song of identity.
Yep.
Who I am. I'm a child of God. There are so many other ways we can identify that may or may not be healthy, but identifying as a child of God is powerful.
I think it's actually really important that people hear this because when we see these kids and we see these families at church, and you just never know what someone is going through and behind closed doors in their family. And we just need to watch what we say so much because it's like when people joke about pregnancies, and to us, that's just, it's not something to joke about. People
Yeah.
might make jokes about other things, then someone is listening and it could be very painful to them too. So it's just,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you never know what could be going on for anyone.
yeah.
And so, yeah, that's an important reminder just to be sensitive and
Yeah.
focus on Christ's love above all else, right?
I do want to go on record by saying that my father did not sexually abuse me, though, because I'm sure that's a concern. And if my family end up coming across this one day, I don't want that to ever be anything that's implanted on anybody's mind for sure. He's not 100% blameless because he was supposed to be one of those adults who protected me, but instead chose selfishness and his own desires over. But yeah, there's a lot to that. There's a lot. And we're, like I said, we're all going through our own healing journey. And as a small kid, that might just be coming to church, and that might be the only reprieve that they get. That might be the only
Yeah.
time that they get Christ in their lives. Because I know it was for me. It was the one time where I genuinely felt safe that there were adults that were around me who, if I asked for help and I felt brave enough to ask for help because I wasn't brave enough, I was conditioned and groomed that if I did say something or reached out, that my life would be taken from me. That my abuser made it very clear that if I did say anything to anybody, that I wouldn't be found again.
Yeah.
But a church was the only place that I truly felt like if I could. And adult Nikki goes back and looks back at childhood Nikki and says, "Why didn't you? Why didn't you scream to the top of your lungs, 'Help me. I need help. I'm struggling to survive. I want food. Can I have the sacrament bread so that you don't feed it to the birds? I need it to take home.'" Little things like that you think of as a child, you shouldn't think of. And I wish sometimes adult Nikki, why didn't you just scream? There were people who would help you. The bad part is my grandfather, who my father's father, was a police officer, so he could have helped me too. I was so afraid. Fear makes you do. Satan uses that as a tool, and fear is one of his greatest tools that he will use against us. Healing looks different for everybody, but if there's that fear makes you do some things that you don't think you think in the moment, "Yeah, I know better. I know how to get myself out of this situation," but when you're just trying to survive, sometimes you have survival mode on and you don't think about the choices that you could have made that would have made your life better. And that's carrying part of that guilt too and the grief. I could have helped my brother and me. I could have helped both of us be in a better life situation. We tried running away and it didn't work and we were always found. We would rather be on the streets because we thought we could take better care of ourselves. Fear just makes you do crazy things. But again, I think that's where Christ comes in. And I can't carry that guilt with me. Our healing paths and our healing journeys are all different. And that's something that I shouldn't have to carry.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing all of that because so many times we think about kids and why don't they say something? Why don't they call for help? And it's too hard. You just don't
yeah,
really know what is going on. Yeah. So
yeah.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share it.
Going along with that, can you describe a little bit more about what healing has looked like for you?
Yeah. Um, so I think healing's taught me that I'm not a shattered porcelain doll that can never be the same. Have you ever tried to put porcelain back together and glue it and how it never quite looks the
Doesn't line
same when it
up and
looks cracked?
yeah.
Yeah, and there's chips and pieces. Um, Healing's taught me that I don't have to feel shattered or broken. I'm more like a broken bone. The break's real. I'll always remember it. I'll remember the pain, but where the bone heals, it becomes stronger. My scars, my emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual scars, they haven't disappeared, but they no longer, again, define my worth. One thing I've been working on in my therapy is imagining what I would say to my younger self. I actually wrote her a letter, and if it's okay, I'd love to
Please,
share it
yes,
here if I
yes.
could. Okay. And forgive me if I get emotional with
Okay.
this, but this
Yeah.
has been a lot of healing through the years. Dear Nikki, I know that you're doing everything that you can just to survive. None of this was your fault. And thank you for protecting me for all those years. You don't have to carry all the responsibility anymore. One day you will meet a man who loves you exactly as you are. You're not broken. You'll survive things. Sorry, I'm crying and I can't read. You'll survive things that should have destroyed you. And one day you'll get to tell your story, not because you're still trapped in it, but because someone else needs to know they're not alone. Ooh, I'm sorry. That was very deep and heavy. It took me a long time to write that. And you know what? I have found that guy. My husband has told me something as I'm going through this continued therapy, because therapy is going to be something that's probably going to be part of my life forever. Um, he says, and I specifically wrote down his words, because I feel like I cheated him. I'm often like, I showed my cards going into this. It's not like I get a mulligan and I get a reset of my cards. This is kind of what I'm going into this game of life with. And I'm like, I'm so sorry that I cheated you. I cheated you out of fatherhood and you fulfilling your priesthood responsibilities. And he tells me, you didn't cheat me. The abuse cheated both of us. I chose you and I choose you over and over again. And those words help me separate what was done to me from who I am. But it wasn't just what he said, it was how he loved me, how he loved me. Because of my childhood sexual abuse, physical intimacy, and I'm sorry for listeners if this is getting a little bit too, but physical intimacy was one of the hardest parts of healing. That's a whole separate, again, it's a whole separate chapter, right? It was one of my greatest fears. It was never rushed or pressured or never, he never made me feel like I was broken though. Um, oh, he was incredibly patient and he helped me learn that intimacy wasn't something to fear or endure through, that it could come from a place of safety and trust and love. And that changed my life. Healing isn't this destination I've arrived at. It's something that I have to choose every day, or Satan will use that fear against me. Um, Now, therapy and EMDR has helped me understand about healing, but healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means that the trauma no longer gets to make every decision for me. One of my favorite Disney quotes is "Keep moving forward." It's Meet the Robinsons. It's totally underrated. If you haven't seen it, it's awesome. But sometimes that means I'm taking giant steps towards my healing journey, and then other days it's simply getting out of bed and saying a prayer. Both count. The best that we can do sometimes is just one day at a time, one step at a time, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes you look at today and say, "That's what I can do." For so many years, I was just surviving. Going back to the letter I wrote myself, this little girl inside me believed, "I have to keep myself alive. I have to keep surviving." Healing has been teaching the woman that I am today that I get to live, because there was so many times when I'm lucky to be here. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, thank you for letting me share that.
Well, that letter is powerful. I really appreciate you sharing that. I know that was probably decades in the works as far as being able to come to that. And I think that's a good exercise for any of us to do some of the hard things that we go through. And what would we say to our younger selves looking back? Thank you for sharing that. I know that was big.
If there's one thing I hope people remember, it's that healing, it's not pretending that the past didn't happen. It's refusing to let it define the rest of your life. Trauma may explain part of my story, but it doesn't get to write my final chapter. I think through Christ, through therapy, through grace, and just by choosing to keep moving forward, I'm learning that hope is still possible. So I guess if you're listening and you're carrying a trauma, if you are going through infertility or experiencing grief or questions about your faith, I think I would just want you to know that your story isn't over. And my story isn't either. What was done to you and what was done to me is not, it's not the same as who we are. I hope that makes sense. What happened matters. It's a part of who I am. It'll forever be with me. It's the reason I am part of who I am today, but it doesn't define or determine your worth or your future. There's still hope. There's always hope. And just to keep moving forward, one day at a time, one step at a time, and that you don't have to walk this path alone. You're not alone.
Thank you. Earlier, you had said a reference to choosing healing every day. Is there anything you can describe as far as what that looks like? Like, how do we choose healing on those really hard days?
That's a tough question. I think it's going to look different for different people each day. Sometimes sometimes I just have problems with just getting up and getting motivated, but I have to remind myself that just one step at a time. I'm grateful for having faith to believe that I'm bigger than, and you'll excuse me for just a moment, for personifying the trauma, but trauma is a beast. I don't want it to win. I can't let it win, 'cause once it does, I know that I've given up, and I don't wanna give up. I think that's what it looks like for me.
Well, I think you are super strong and brave to tell your story, and I don't think trauma has won with you.
And so here is Nikki, someone who has gone through these horrific experiences, and yet she is choosing a path of healing and hope and Christ, even on those hardest days. I have not gone through the trauma you've gone through, but I've had my periods of really hard depression, whatever. And I think, what does it look like that day to choose? And sometimes it's just getting through the day.
Uh,
It may not be anything that I'm actively doing, but I'm here. I'm not giving up on everything. Sometimes it isn't doing anything except just letting time pass. So I don't want anyone to have a feeling of like you're supposed to be doing these things
right.
to bring about the healing, because especially victims of abuse, that none of this is your fault. The only thing any of us can really do is allow Christ to come into the picture and to be a part of it and to help us. And he's going to do that through a million different ways, different resources, different people, different opportunities, experiences. It's going to look like so many different things, how he brings healing to us and offers it to us. And then as we start to see those opportunities, we can grasp onto that and progress a little bit more, a little bit further each time. So there's no formula to that except
Yeah.
Jesus.
Right.
So speaking on like healing and faith and everything, you've mentioned a couple times that you do EMDR therapy. Could you share with us a little bit of what EMDR therapy is like?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that therapy has been a part of my whole life, and I knew that it would be. There's just a lot of different things that come up at different periods of time and different chapters in our life. Like now, I'm uh, now realizing that there probably won't be children that bless our home, and so infertility has definitely been something that's been weighing hard. This is the first time that I've experienced EMDR therapy. I'm a few months in. I would love to give better insight. I'm actually still getting my feet pretty wet on it. And it's going to look differently for different people. What it does, though, it allows you to process memories and remember things without it causing so much of a physiological response, and it uses eye movement and tapping and other things. And I even believe Dr. Colby even brought up some of those things. I was like, oh, I'm experiencing that through the EMDR therapy. And going back to Shannon's question, if there is anybody who has experienced trauma or is experiencing anything, to hit on that therapy note, there are resources that are out there. There are free resources that are out there for those who want to take that next step in their healing journey. It is just as simple as picking up your phone and researching it and what's local in your area. There are support groups. EMDR therapy is just a deeper therapy to help deal with PTSD, depression, anxiety, all of those things encompassed in what I'm dealing with. So EMDR, it's just another depth of it.
You mentioned something that yesterday in Relief Society, in our binder, there was a thing, it says family services therapy groups, and that they have groups for healing from sexual abuse, anxiety and depression groups, grief and loss. So I kind of want to look more into this to see what resources the church has for this
I've actually
because
been to several therapists who are provided through the church, and it's pretty amazing. My husband and I, he was going with me because he's a part of this as well, overcoming the physical part. So there was one therapist who I absolutely adored and loved, and I hate that she moved because they understand it from a religious point of view and from our core. And I think that helps us put things in perspective in a different way. I also appreciate the therapists who are not because they can give an outside perspective of it, but I deeply enjoyed the therapy and I felt more enriched with the therapist that went through the church. So I highly recommend it for anybody who they're out there and they're amazing.
So for anyone listening that is like, where do I go for therapy? I'm pretty sure if you talk to your bishop, which I know can be a really big thing to even mention any of this to a bishop, but if you go to your bishop or maybe your Relief Society president, they do have resources and they can help find those resources for you. Because in most areas, there are LDS therapists available, and I know there's addiction recovery groups also, and kind of like our podcast, sometimes having a group therapy session can be really beneficial. So even if you just go to one and listen to what others might say, can be helpful. So please, if you're looking for a place for therapy, reach out to those people because they can help find something for you in your area.
Absolutely. How has your perspective changed through this whole journey?
So, for years, I believed that trauma had already written the rest of my life. I thought that abuse had determined my future, but healing has changed my perspective. It's taught me that God is still writing my story. Heavenly Father's been teaching me as I've been going through my healing process, and I think this is very important. He's teaching me to show myself the same grace that I so freely give to other people. I spent years believing my worth depended on what I could give. Um, a a healthy childhood, children of my own, someone being whole because I had felt so broken, and I used the bunny ears, the air quotes as whole. But my worth was never tied to any of those things. It's always been there because I'm a daughter of God. I'm a child of God. I think if anything takes anything away from my story, I hope that it's healing isn't pretending that the past didn't happen. It's refusing to let it define the rest of your life. And my story doesn't end with abuse. It doesn't end with fertility, or it doesn't end with infertility. Yeah, it doesn't even end with grief. Trauma doesn't get the final chapter. I'm not going to let that beast hold me down, or I'm not going to be afraid of it anymore. Um, at least for today, this particular chapter ends with a woman who is still healing, still trusting in Heavenly Father's plan, and brave enough to tell her story so that someone else might believe there's hope out there for those. So just to keep moving forward. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it's taken to be able to just put all that out there. So just know how much we appreciate that. And the naive, sheltered part of me wants to hope that there aren't that many people that can relate that have gone through similar things. But the reality is, I'm sure there are many. And
Yeah.
that's tragic and heartbreaking, but it's the world that we live in now and the things that
It
we have to deal with because of other people's choices. And so if anyone listening has gone through any of this stuff that has contributed to your infertility or just in other contexts too, just we just want to remind you, like Nikki has said, that the story's not over, that none of that happened to you defines your worth, and that the final chapter is still out there and you get to have a say in how that goes down, which is awesome. And when we do it with Jesus, we know it's going to be good. So it might be different than what we imagined or wanted in some ways. But as we let him write that final chapter with us, I say final, we have a lot of chapters, all of us, before we get to the end. But as we let him, as we walk that road with him, it's going to be good and it's going to be rich and full of blessings. And I think we can see that through your faith and testimony, Nikki. So thank you so much for sharing that. I can also just say from my vantage point of being in the same ward as Nikki, that the youth love her and her husband. They just adore the Whites, and the Whites adore the youth. I feel like I can say that. You would never guess that Nikki has gone through all this terrible stuff. The love she shares with especially the youth and children of our ward, which now knowing all this kind of gives me a different appreciation for why maybe you might be so focused on them and sharing that love. Just so, so impressive and so meaningful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's so sweet.
Nikki, is there anything else that you want to share from your story or anything else you want people to know?
If this ever future gets blown up, please be kind with
I
comments.
know. I know.
I think other people who have gone through trauma or who have gone through experiences similar to mine, when you hear it, sometimes you think it's going to define who you are with the friendship moving forward, or they're going to see that abused, broken person from here on in, so they don't necessarily know how to talk to me. Or if they say something, they're like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. And you're like, it's okay. I've lived life watching the news. I'm not as fragile as you think. But at the same token, there are days where, and I think you ladies can relate, especially on Mother's Day at church. Or now, I will say this though, I think our ward specifically has been a lot better about recognizing women in general. But I also feel like it's Mother's Day. I get it. They deserve a place to be recognized and stuff. I and my husband can't go on Father's Day either because it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah,
mm,
those are 2 days I definitely am like, I have to stay home. But you're right, it can hit any day. Just this
yep.
week, I was sitting there and there was this adorable little boy, like 1 or 2, just so cute, and he just kept looking at my dad, and he my dad is just so good with kids, so all the kids love him, but I was just like, I don't know, it just hit me that day, and sitting in Relief Society, I was struggling, and we just never know what's gonna make our grief show up, and just remember to be kind to people because you just have no idea what they're going through. And you said something about grace that I was just like, you said something about giving yourself grace the way you give it to others. Man, it is so much easier to say these things to other people that we know we need to be telling ourselves. So thank you for saying
1000%.
that.
No, I appreciate you highlighting that. If you 2 were sitting across the table from me and you were telling me your story, I would probably hug you and probably comfort you and give you the other handkerchief that I haven't used and say, "You know what, girl? It's okay. Cry. It's okay. I love you. Jesus loves you. We're gonna get through this. And today, cry. Do what you need to do. Go eat a pint of ice cream. It's okay. Calories are free on those
That's
days."
right.
You
Definitely.
know?
Yeah,
So, but it's interesting flipping the table. Would I be that graceful and compassionate with myself? And the answer, I wish I could say yes all the time, but the answer a lot of times, 99% of the time, is no, I would not allow that same grace for myself. So that's something I have to actively be paying attention to when I start being my own worst enemy, is what I like to call it.
yeah. Yeah, I think we are our own worst enemies a lot of times, and we need to stop that. We need to be our friend. We need to be a friend to ourselves because we can't always rely on other people to give us that. And we need to learn that it's okay to love ourselves and give ourselves grace. So, yeah, thank you.
This might be a weird thought, but I'm thinking about God has given us all these resources for healing that come in different ways. And one of those resources can be our relationship with ourself as we learn to love ourselves in those healthy ways and give ourselves the grace that He gives us. That can also be a resource or a tool or something.
Makes perfect sense.
So we're all on this infertility journey. Different things have brought us onto the journey, but here we are riding this train. And Nikki had mentioned the image at one point of us linking arms as we walk forward on this journey. And so I want to invite anyone listening who might be feeling alone in this to go ahead and link arms with us and just know
Definitely.
that you are not alone walking this journey. Pam just did her. Yeah, we're all doing our
We're all linking our
linking
arms.
gestures here.
We might be in separate places, but we can spiritually link arms together.
Yes. Yes. And for me, that image is powerful and I appreciate it. And there's more than the three of us. There's tons of us
Yeah.
out there. So
Oh
if
my gosh, I want to do a big cinnamon roll hug with everybody that we've talked to and
we just did that at
everybody
our
out there
family
going through this.
reunion the other day. It's so great. If you don't know what a cinnamon roll hug is, it's where you link arms and then kind of roll up like a cinnamon roll and then squeeze is the best. So yes, let's do a virtual cinnamon roll hug, everyone. We're linking arms. Spot squeeze.
Yeah, and like Nikki, you mentioned how hard it is to tell your story and how this is the first time. And like you are so brave because man, when I sat here telling my story and like now I'm like, okay, well, my story is definitely not as hard as your story. And so you have just been so brave. And I hope other people can see because like I know for me, it was just this, huh, okay, it's out there. And like, there's definitely some relief in telling your story, and I hope other people can feel even if they don't tell us their story, that they can feel like it's okay to tell your story to people. Yeah, some people might judge your story, and you know what? We don't care what they think because they haven't lived your story, and they have no room to judge what you've been through, and so, yeah, you're not alone. We all have our stories, and that's why we want to talk to people and get it out there. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank the both of you because I don't think I would have had the courage to do this. And I know that we're kind of honing in and putting a microscope under the trauma, but ultimately it's infertility, right? And this forum has allowed me to link both of those things because there's plenty of forums out there and plenty of group therapies that I can go out there and be a part of for my trauma, but to understand the infertility part of it. So I actually owe a big thank you to you two because I don't think I would have been brave enough to do this if you hadn't have opened up this forum. And Pam, I'm going to kind of I I want you to show yourself the same grace because you're like, "Oh, my story wasn't as." I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it's all of us going down this path together. We have different avenues that we've taken to get here, but we're all on this infertility journey together. And to be a place where we can come together as sisters in Zion, but also give praise to our Heavenly Father and allowing the infertility to not be a defining our end. It's not going to be our end. And it's whatever we've gone through is not going to be the end for us. So I just ultimately, your story, Pam, actually really touched me. And it made me think of things that I didn't think about with adoption and fostering. And Shannon, your health issues. Infertility is just this small piece of us, it doesn't define the whole. So I am so, so grateful for this forum, you ladies. You guys are setting some amazing groundwork and some amazing foundations. So I can't wait to see what's to come. And I hope I'm forever a part of it.
Thank you. Your words mean so much.
Really, we just felt like there was a need to provide a place where we could do this. And so we hope that this reaches the right people. That's always our prayer. And we invite anyone who wants to share their story to please reach out to us through our social media channels because we would love to have you on. We know it takes a lot of courage and bravery to get out here and speak it, but I think all of us who have done it, it has been helpful. So that is an open invitation to anyone out there who would like to share. All right. Well, thank you again, Nikki, for everything you have shared. Again, I feel like uplifted. It's weird. You wouldn't think you would feel good after such a heavy conversation, but there is just this sense of strength and combined faith that we can share with one another that is powerful and I really appreciate. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Pam, always for being here.
Yes.
Mhm. Thank you.
All right. Well, we like to end our episodes with a quote from President Dieter F. Uchtdorf. He said, "Never stop hoping for all of the righteous desires of your heart, but don't close your eyes and hearts to the simple and elegant beauties of each day's ordinary moments that make up a rich, well lived life." Thank you so much for listening today. We want to invite anyone who would like to share their own story to reach out to us. We have a Facebook group called Full Faith Empty Arms LDS Infertility Support that we're trying to get started and grow. We're also on Instagram at Full Faith Empty Arms. So feel free to get in touch with us through either of those channels. And please go on and find those pages and help us gain a little bit of momentum there so that more people will see some resources out there for support. Because there are probably a lot of people who can relate to your unique struggle. We just have to connect. And please also go ahead and subscribe or follow the show so that you'll learn about new episodes as they're released. Thanks so much and have a great day.